White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki standing firm that the U.S. will not be moving forward on a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Watch.
How President Biden makes decisions is through the prism of our own national security. And as we've said before, a no-fly zone would require implementation. It would require us potentially shooting down Russian planes, NATO shooting down Russian planes, and we are not interested in getting into World War III.
Joining me now is Pennsylvania Congressman Guy Reschenthaler. He's a member of the House Judiciary, Foreign Affairs, and Armed Services Committee. Congressman, what do you make of those comments, particularly after Zelensky's address to not just Congress, but our nation yesterday?
Well, Dagan, good morning, and as always, thanks for having me on. Jen Psaki is so out of touch on this. What we need is leadership from this administration. And the longer we wait, the longer that Joe Biden vacillates, the more civilian casualties we're going to see in Ukraine. We should be supplying those MiG-29s. We should have done that days ago. This aid package, it's a great step in the right direction. But Joe Biden and Jen Psaki are taking a victory lap on this. We got to remember, it was Congress that passed the appropriations to get the aid to the Ukrainian people. It's just Joe Biden signing what Congress passed into law. So not only is Joe Biden not leading on the international stage, he's not leading here in D.C. Congress has actually been way ahead of Joe Biden and the administration in terms of Ukraine. And as far as Jen Psaki taking options off the table, she's wrong. That's not how you negotiate. You especially don't negotiate that way with Vladimir Putin. We should not take any option off the table. And let me be clear about something. A no-fly zone, it's not going to be a World War II era dogfight in the skies. We're going to be able to jam the Russian planes and their electronics through electronic warfare. As soon as our no-fly zone goes up and our planes go up, the Russian planes go down. That is the only way we're going to minimize civilian casualties in this war.
But that has to be a NATO negotiation, doesn't it?
Well, no, the United States can lead here. Remember, Ukraine, as we all know, is not in NATO. But what we're lacking here is leadership in the free world. Zelensky is de facto the leader of the free world right now. He's the modern day Winston Churchill. Biden, on the other hand, is the modern day Neville Chamberlain. His weakness, his acquiescence to these tyrants and these dictators has led to the aggression that we're seeing from Putin. And it's just not Russia here. The CCP is already making statements that if we supply materiel to Taiwan, they'll view that as an act of aggression. We've got Iran shooting missiles into U.S. military bases in Iraq. This is spilling over into hostility and aggression from all our adversaries. And again, the only thing that stops this is bold, decisive action from Joe Biden or some leader in the West.
I want to get to Ukrainian President Zelensky making that emotional plea. We've been talking about it to Congress yesterday, asking for the U.S. to do more, hitting on what you're talking about. But listen to this.
President Biden, you are the leader of the nation, of your great nation. I wish you to be the leader of the world. Being the leader of the world means to be the leader of peace.
Congressman, I want to bring Mark Tepper in because one of Zelensky's requests was to tell American businesses or get all American businesses out of Russia. And the businesses that are still there are largely food companies and drug companies providing medicine and food to Russia. And I wondered if that would, if they would leave, like a Unilever is there. These companies have stopped advertising in Russia, but they're still providing goods and services. Would getting those companies out of Russia, one, would it happen, Mark, but two, would it have an impact on Putin's war on the Ukrainian people?
Look, the Russian people need to eat. So obviously the food companies are still there for a reason. They're not the ones at fault here. This is led by the Kremlin. It's led by Putin. And look, most companies have already pulled out of Russia. If you remember, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, McDonald's hesitated from pulling out, and their revenues dropped pretty substantially. So there was a PR backlash there, and then they eventually pulled out as well. Do I think the food companies and basic necessity kind of companies need to pull out? Probably not. I mean, the Russian people are not bad people. This is Putin's fault.
I should say global businesses, not just American businesses. But Congressman, what else can the United States do in terms of sanctions? Because I continue to point out that oil and natural gas is still being bought by not necessarily the refiners here in the United States. They moved ahead of even the White House to cut off those supplies, but natural gas is still flowing to Europe. Oil is still flowing out of Russia to places even in Europe, but particularly in Asia. So until you really cut off those supplies and starve Putin, what else will the West do that has an impact on Putin's aggression?
Well, Dagan, you're exactly right. There's so many carve-outs with the embargo of Russian petroleum, natural gas, et cetera. And we're in a weakened position because Joe Biden declared war on our energy sector. The other problem we're having is that China is backfilling a lot of these sanctions. So Russia can export their petroleum to China. China can give them access to the Chinese banking system and so forth. So China is undermining our sanctions. That's what's going on. So what can we do? I think we need more lethal aid given to the Ukrainians. Get those MiG-29s to them last week. And I am supportive of a no-fly zone, at least jamming the electronics of the Russian planes to make sure we ground their Air Force and end the civilian casualties. But I think that if you don't see that, we're going to see many more civilian casualties.
Mm-hmm. I do know that Biden was asked about, at the end of the statement he made yesterday, asked about those, the MiG, the Soviet-era jets going into Ukraine, and he wouldn't comment, which is a step in the right direction, rather than carrying out on a public stage the back and forth indecision by our administration. Him saying nothing about that maybe was positive. Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, thank you so much for being here this morning. Great to speak with you.